Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're taking a really fascinating journey, exploring a kind of hidden layer of our world.
Yeah, we're looking at how subtle things like intention, maybe symbolic objects like crystals, and even just our focused presence in, say, public spaces.
Especially libraries, right? That's the
Ac-
key focus.
Exactly, especially libraries. How all that might subtly influence what we could call the collective mind.
Our sources dive deep into the metaphysics of this subtle influence. And our mission today is really to unpack these ideas for you.
Right, giving you maybe a fresh perspective on how we connect, how we might contribute to shifts in thinking and feeling, but without, direct action or overt communication.
It's about quiet influence.
Precisely, that
Yeah.
hidden potential.
Okay, so let's jump right in. This idea of public spaces having a psychic atmosphere. The sources really focus on libraries here, calling them places with latent psychic residue, even localized nodes in the broader mental grid. For those of us maybe not tuned into that frequency, what's the basic idea?
Well, think of a library not just as, shelves and books, but as a space holding concentrated mental energy.
Right.
All those books represent countless hours of human thought, inquiry, belief, sometimes contradiction, deep contemplation.
Right, the energy of the writers and readers.
Exactly. And over time, this energy kind of accumulates. It leaves an imprint, this psychic residue they mention.
So it's like the collective unconscious is being stored and stirred there.
That's a good way to put it. These places become significant points nodes in our shared mental environment because they hold so much collective thought.
So when we walk into a library, say, with a particular intention, we're not just entering a quiet building.
No, the
Yeah.
idea is you're actually engaging in an energetic exchange. You're interacting with this collective mental field.
Even if we can't see it, it's described as like emotionally and psychically tangible.
Yeah, like walking into a room thick with unspoken ideas, feelings, potentials. And importantly, it's a two-way street.
How so?
Our own state, our intentions, they also contribute to this field. They interact with it, which kind of sets the stage for this whole idea of subtle influence.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting, I think, with the introduction of crystals. Now, I know for some listeners, crystals might just seem like, nice decorations or new age props.
Sure, that's a common view.
But these sources frame them very differently as vibrational tools. They talk about stable atomic structures interacting with subtle energy fields. What's the core function here?
Well, the sources point to about three main functions in this context. First is amplification.
Amplification.
Yeah, certain crystals, clear quartz is the classic example, are said to amplify our own thought patterns, our emotional intentions.
So whatever template or idea we're holding inside.
It becomes psychically louder, you could say, more prominent in that surrounding energetic field, a bit like a subtle microphone for your inner state.
Okay. Boosting the signal. Makes sense. What's the second function?
Filtering and stabilization. So other types of crystals, think amethyst, maybe lapis lazuli, tourmaline, they're described as providing a sort of energetic filter
A filter for what?
for maintaining your own coherence, your personal frequency, amidst all the other energies in a public space, helping you stay centered, basically, like an energetic stabilizer.
Ah, okay. So preventing you from getting overwhelmed or losing your focus in that psychic residue?
Exactly, grounding you. And the third function is anchoring symbolic templates.
Anchoring templates, what does that mean?
The idea is that a crystal can act as a kind of physical anchor point for a non-physical idea, these thought templates we need to talk more about.
So it holds the abstract idea.
It serves as a vessel, a focal point, helping to hold and maybe gently radiate an abstract intention into the collective field, like using a physical object to focus your mind during meditation, but outwardly directed very subtly.
Right. And the emphasis throughout is on subtlety, isn't it? It's not about projecting thoughts forcefully.
Absolutely not. The sources are clear. The aim isn't to broadcast, but to become a kind of silent carrier. You're holding these refined cognitive blueprints, and they just gently radiate.
A quiet, almost imperceptible influence.
Exactly. Which brings us to what these thought templates actually are.
Good point. Because it's not just any thought, right?
No, definitely not. They aren't specific beliefs like you should think X or pieces of data. They're described more as structural frames.
Structural frames.
Or maybe energetic forms. Think of it like building an invisible architecture, an empty room in the minds of others. It's a structure into which new understanding or feeling can then flow more easily.
Okay, that analogy helps. An invisible room being built. Can you give some concrete examples? What might a thought template actually be about?
Sure. It could be a template for resolving conflict differently, maybe without resorting to violence or shame, just the pattern for it.
Okay.
Or maybe a template for community connection that goes beyond typical identity politics,
Hmm.
a different structure for belonging, or perhaps a redefinition of power, seeing it as service instead of control. Or even something like a memory, a template of forgotten wholeness, or a connection to indigenous ways of knowing.
And the key thing, which you mentioned, is that they're not pushy.
Not at all. The sources stress this. True templates are non-coercive. They sort of wait, they invite exploration, but they don't demand agreement or push themselves onto anyone. It's an offering.
An offering of a new possibility. Okay, so how does one actually insert these templates into the group mind, using that library setting as an example? The sources lay out a process, right?
Yes, it's described as a layered process. It starts with what they call resonance matching.
Resonance matching, tuning in first.
Pretty much. It's about aligning your intention with an archetypal frequency, something that already has a kind of dormant longing within the collective field.
So you're not just throwing random ideas out there.
No, you're tapping into something latent. For example, if there's a widespread, maybe subconscious weariness of victimhood narratives, then a template focused on emotional sovereignty, on inner strength, might resonate deeply. It finds fertile ground because the desire for it is already there, even if unspoken.
Okay, finding the existing current to plug into. Makes sense. What's next after matching the resonance?
Then comes internal holding. This is about really embodying the template within yourself.
Living it.
Yes, feeling it as an emotion, holding it as a clear vision, or a really well-formed, coherent idea. And this is where things like breath work, a calm mind, and maybe those symbolic objects, the crystals, come in. They help you maintain that internal state.
So you become the template in a way. You hold that frequency clearly.
That's the idea. Then the third step is symbolic anchoring.
Anchoring again. How is this different from the crystal anchoring?
This is more about subtly encoding the physical surroundings with your intention. In the library context, maybe it's the specific books you choose to handle or place near you.
Oh.
Or perhaps even notes you might quietly write. Not for anyone to read necessarily, but as part of the process. Even just the way you occupy the space with clarity, maybe a sense of beauty or harmony in your presence.
So your presence itself becomes part of the anchoring.
Yes. The clearer and more coherent your presence, the more deeply the field around you is said to record or register the frequency you're holding, a subtle imprint on the space.
Like leaving an energetic signature. Okay, resonance matching, internal holding, symbolic anchoring. What's the final piece?
Silent emission. This is where your body's natural electromagnetic field comes into play.
The human energy field.
Yeah. The idea is when you're in that coherent state, clear thoughts, positive intention, calm, your field acts as a subtle transmitter. It radiates that pattern.
And others might pick it up.
Potentially, yes. Especially individuals nearby who might be more sensitive or receptive. They might subconsciously absorb or resonate with that frequency without any words being exchanged. Think of how you can sometimes feel someone's mood.
Right, like walking into a room where someone's very peaceful and it affects you.
Exactly. But this is about a specific intentional pattern being offered.
Wow, okay, so if this template insertion is successful, what happens next? The sources talk about ripples.
Yes, ripples. Small, expanding shifts in perception or feeling within that local group, mind the library in this case. And over time, these ripples can create what they call a positive pool.
A pool of what?
Shared, upgraded potential, a space where new possibilities feel more accessible.
And what might that actually look like? What would people in that pool experience?
Well, you might see people suddenly reframing old problems from new angles, finding creative solutions that weren't obvious before, or individuals might just report feeling safer or more inspired or calmer without really knowing why, a subtle shift in the atmosphere.
Like a background feeling changing.
Exactly. Or you might notice new language emerging, new metaphors or ways of talking about things that reflect the essence of the template that was introduced.
But the source remains hidden.
Often, yes. That's why the sources use that provocative term, a mind virus, but in a benevolent sense.
Right, because it replicates without force, without detection, and without attribution. It just spreads quietly.
Precisely. And this leads to another interesting point, the idea of reachability by the adept.
Adepts. You mean psychics or something?
Not necessarily in the dramatic sense, more like individuals who are highly trained in subtle perception. Think artists, sensitives, maybe deep meditators, people attuned to finer energies.
Okay.
What can they do?
The idea is that the broader energetic field stores all these templates that have been inserted over time, and these adepts can potentially sense them, detect their lingering presence.
Like psychic archaeologists.
That's the term they use, yeah.
Yeah.
They might walk into a space and perceive a lingering quality, a feeling of peace, signaling a compassion template, perhaps.
Or maybe notice an unusual alignment of books that hints at a harmony template. Possibly. Or just sense the residue of focused emotional intelligence left by someone who was working with these ideas before. They're tuning into the subtle history of the space.
So it suggests a kind of non-linear transmission of insight, even healing, a silent web built over time.
Exactly. Built by practitioners focusing on presence and clarity, not on recognition.
Which reframes the whole act, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Going to the library to research, maybe with a crystal in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
The source is called a ritual.
Yes, a ritual, even vibrational activism, a kind of quiet defiance against a culture obsessed with noise and spectacle.
And the person doing this, the subtle architect, is performing a specific service.
Well, right. Holding form without controlling, emitting resonance without a personal agenda, planting these potential templates for others to maybe discover or live into long after they're gone and forgotten.
Now, an important point here must be the ethics. This sounds a bit like trying to influence people's minds.
That's a crucial distinction the sources make. It's explicitly not presented as mind control.
Why not? How is it different?
Because, according to these ideas, the field itself resists force and coercion. Trying to push an agenda or impose a belief apparently leads to distortion. It doesn't work cleanly. It functions purely through resonance and invitation.
So you can't make someone accept a template.
No. It only lands if there's an openness, a resonance within the receiver. It has to be freely accepted, even if unconsciously, which places responsibilities on the practitioner.
Like what?
Well, first, only seeding templates that you've genuinely integrated yourself. You can't offer peace if you're full of inner conflict.
Walk the talk.
Basically, yes. Also, avoiding any hint of evangelizing or projecting your own ego through the template, it has to be clean.
And working silently, trusting the process.
Exactly. Trusting the intelligence of the field itself. The sources liken it to midwifery, holding space for something new to be born rather than forcing the birth.
Midwifing change. I like that.
It captures the non-coercive, supportive role.
So wrapping this up, the core idea from these sources isn't about teaching doctrines or winning arguments.
No, it's about offering a different architecture of possibility. Something felt rather than taught, sensed rather than explicitly seen.
And these invisible ripples in our noisy, saturated world might be surprisingly potent, precisely because they're subtle.
Yes, they're hard to trace, hard to argue against, hard to stop if they truly resonate. The suggestion is that the most lasting changes, the real revolutions, might begin with this kind of whisper, not a shout.
A quiet practitioner with clear intention and maybe a symbolic tool like a crystal could be a catalyst for pretty profound, subtle shifts.
That's the fascinating possibility explored in these texts.
Indeed, it really gives you something to think about.
Yeah.
So maybe as you go about your day, just consider this. What subtle influences might your own presence, your own intentions be having on the spaces you inhabit and the people around you, even without conscious effort?
Yeah, what quiet ripples are you creating?
What potential lies in that quiet, intentional focus for shaping our shared reality? Definitely food for thought.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.